Hello everyone and welcome to this special edition of Eye on Africa. All eyes are on Cairo tonight as the 32nd edition of the Africa Cup of Nations kicks off. 24 teams will battle it out in 6 venues over the course of the next 4 weeks to try to clinch the coveted title of Best African Football Team. The big final will be held on July 19th at Cairo's International Stadium. That's also where it all begins tonight in just about 15 minutes. Host country Egypt will go head-to-head with Zimbabwe. Both teams are in Group A alongside the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda. Joining me on the set is France 24's Selena Sykes. Selena, we're reunited once again to talk all things football. It's the first year there will be 24 teams in the competition, which will certainly make things just that much more exciting. Run us through some of the favorites in this year's competition.
So, Wasim, I'm going to start with the hosts, Egypt. They've won 7 titles. That's more than any other team in Africa have won. And they haven't had much success as of late, so they're going to be hungry to deliver on home soil. And they have a formidable record when it comes to playing at home in the Africa Cup of Nations. 3 of those 7 titles were won while they were hosts, most recently in 2006. The Pharaohs have a really competent and experienced squad, which of course is led by their talisman, Mo Salah. He's coming off at the back of that amazing Champions League win with Liverpool. And really good news for Egypt, he is 100% fit, unlike during the World Cup last year where he was struggling with that shoulder injury. So we'll have to see if Egypt can handle the pressure of being the hosts. I know there's a lot of expectation among the fans.
The Egyptian public is waiting. Next up, Senegal. It seems crazy, but with all this talent they've had, they've never won the Africa Cup of Nations. But maybe this year?
It's really quite surprising. They are the highest ranked team FIFA-wise in Africa, and they have a really long history of producing quality players, so maybe this year is their year. They've got a solid squad captained by another Liverpool star, Sadio Mane. Along with Salah, he was the Premier League's top scorer this season. Senegal will be without him for the first game, though. He is suspended after picking up 2 yellow cards in the qualifiers.
Yep, and we're also watching Morocco.
Yes, Morocco also look well placed to contend. They're coming in on a back of a good string of results, including a draw against Spain last year in the World Cup. And they've got a mix of experience and young talent, including Hakim Ziyech, who had a great season with Ajax. And they also are led by the much experienced Hervé Renard. He's already won 2 Africa Cup of Nations with 2 different countries. That's Zambia and the Ivory Coast.
Okay, Egypt, Senegal, Morocco. Are those your favorites? Okay. We'll definitely watch them. As we've mentioned, all eyes are on Egypt as the tournament gets underway. Let's go to Egypt, to the city of Alexandria, where sports editor and commentator Steve Vickers joins us live. Steve, thanks for being with us. How is the home team feeling tonight ahead of its big opening match? And of course, you know, with those 90 million supporters also, how are they feeling?
Yeah, there's a big buzz here, Hassim. There really is in the capital, Cairo, where I travelled from today, and here in Alexandria as well. Lots of Egypt flags are flying along the roadsides, and quite literally in the city centres of Egypt's very busy roads. Every streetlight has got a poster on it publicising the Africa Cup of Nations, some of them with the picture of the wonderful mascot who's called Tut, as in the ancient King Tutankhamun. It looks like King Tutankhamun in a way, but he's got his football boots and is kicking a football. So people are very expectant here. They're thinking that they will get off to a winning start tonight against Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, a team that can punch above their weight, but with the likes of Mo Salah, it's likely to be a good evening for the Egyptian fans.
Yeah, I'm sure Egypt will be hoping that King Tut will bring them some good luck tonight. This big match was actually in jeopardy for a few hours, with some Zimbabwe players actually threatening to boycott the game. Tell us a bit more about that.
Goodness, we had 24 hours of drama. Only early this afternoon was the boycott called off. Zimbabwe players had been promised money by the Zimbabwe Football Association, which didn't come as promised. They should have had it midweek. And they decided to say, well, we'll even go home and not play this prestigious opening match if it comes to this. The sports minister had to get involved and to talk to the players. This morning, I met the Zimbabwe Football Association president in Cairo just after he arrived in the country. He said it was just an error with the processing of the monies going through into the accounts, and indeed the $9,000 that the players were promised is now starting to reflect in their accounts. So they're happy now, and they are going ahead with the match. But this time yesterday, it was looking very shaky indeed.
Okay, and you can confirm that the Zimbabwe players are somewhere in the stadium getting ready to play against Egypt, right?
They definitely are. They will be there and be doing their best.
Okay, great. Cameroon was initially supposed to host this year's Africa Cup of Nations, but they were stripped of their hosting rights back in November. How challenging has it been for Egypt to welcome the tournament with 8 months' notice? And will it be challenging for those teams given how hot Egypt is at this time of year?
Well, Egypt have got great facilities, so not that difficult, really, considering the stadiums that they have. In fact, Africa's second biggest stadium, the Borg El Arab here in Alexandria, is not even needed to be used for this. It's too big, so they're using the 20,000 Alexandria Stadium. For Cameroon, they felt rather hard done by because when they were given the hosting rights, it was a 16-team tournament, then expanded to 24, so it needed extra venues, and they were deemed to be too far behind in their preparations. You can view it too in the light of African football politics. Issa Hayatou, the long-time CAF president, is from Cameroon. Then 2 years ago, Ahmed from Madagascar took over. Some saw it as retribution to punish Issa Hayatou, and Egypt are in very good books with the new CAF presidency. So some even looking at it as a reflection of African football politics. But no doubt Egypt will host this very well, and we're expecting a great tournament.
All right, Steve Vickers, sports editor and commentator, joining us from Alexandria. The game begins in just over 10 minutes. Steve, thank you and enjoy the game. All right, Selena, not the first time Egypt is hosting the tournament, but there are a few firsts in this year's tournament.
That's right, Wasim. So this is the first time that the tournament is being held in Europe summer instead of the usual February slot. That was after decision made by the Confederation of African Football, as previously mentioned, which is good news for European clubs because there's often been disputes in the past about releasing these players mid-season. Previously, players have even refused their call-up to represent their national team, which is really quite something. And it also means that these players will have had a good rest before the tournament, but they will be facing some really sweltering temperatures in Egypt. The other thing that's also been mentioned is obviously the tournament has been expanded from 16 to 24 teams, which is the same format we saw in the Euros in 2016 and the Women's World Cup, which is currently underway. So that means 6 groups of 4 teams, which means that 4 third best placed teams will also qualify for the last 16. Some have argued that this dilutes the quality of the football, but the positive thing is it does open up doors for the smaller nations that have never competed before. We've got 3 new sides, Burundi, Mauritania and Madagascar. And their national team has been hailed as national heroes after qualifying for the first time in their history. And our team in Madagascar caught up with them and one of their players in his hometown.
Take a look.
Baggio looks relaxed as he wanders around his neighborhood in his flip-flops. The 23 years old will play for Madagascar in the continent's most prestigious football tournament, the Africa Cup of Nations. Meanwhile, he still trains in the streets where he grew up.
For my personal training, I run here. I start from mine and I go very far away over there where the pylon is. There is a slope very far and I stop there. I do that to have strength and maximum fitness.
The team's nicknamed the Barriers. It's the first time that Madagascar's ever qualified for CAN, and Baggio's since become a star in his neighborhood.
He doesn't show up. He has always been down to earth.
Football's in his blood. Baggio's father played, but never managed to join the national squad. Baggio only earns €250 per month, but it's still enough to provide for his parents, wife and son. He says he doesn't need much because his focus is on his performance.
Maybe, to all appearances, we live a simple, modest life. But when on the pitch, there is no poor nor rich. When you're there, you give it all you have.
His family cannot afford to go to Egypt. They'll be watching the games on a battered old television.
We will try by all means to subscribe to pay-per-view TV and buy a television.
Baggio's team has been given star treatment in a meeting with the country's president, Andry Radziwiłł. The Barriers asked for some financial support from the government. The gamble paid off. They're given a check for a whopping $200,000. That will help with buying decent food and accommodation during the tournament in Egypt. Amongst the team's fans is the nationally beloved Argentinian priest, Father Pedro. The missionaries donned the team's shirt and offered his support.
We pray for you to reach your destination, to the final phase of the African Cup of Nations in Egypt. We pray for you, for God, and for the ancestors to look after you during this trial.
The Barriers are hoping to make it at least past the first round. They'll first face Guinea on June the 22nd.
Okay, Selena, we've talked about the favorites. We've talked about the first-timers like Madagascar. Are there any dark horses that could end up snatching the title?
So, Wasim, what is great about this tournament is that it's often full of surprises. Cameroon won back in 2017 and they were not at all the favourites. So there will be many teams thinking they might have an outside shot at some glory. A few names that we shouldn't rule out are Ghana, Nigeria, Ivory Coast and Tunisia. Tunisia failed to get out of their group stage in the World Cup, but they did have a pretty difficult group with semi-finalists England and Belgium, obviously, in their group. But they did manage to beat the runners-up in the World Cup, Croatia, in a friendly recently.
Correct. So that might be a good sign for
sign.
Tunisia. They're hoping to do well in this year's tournament. The team has a new coach, Alain Giresse. Our team in Tunis, Lilia Blaise and Hamdi Tlili, went to the Eagles' last training session before they took off for Egypt. They sent us this report.
At their final training session before they depart for Egypt, Tunisia's national team, the Eagles, are finally ready. The stakes are high for the Africa Cup. Tunisia haven't won the trophy since 2004, but today they have the will to win.
It's a tournament. We have to take every game one by one. But I hope that we'll have a win in the first match.
Among this year's roster, the majority of players play in foreign leagues and were in the team that participated in the 2018 World Cup, like Ferjani Sessi, a midfielder.
We know that Tunisians have a lot of expectations for this African Cup. I hope we will play better football than last year.
As of December 2018, Tunisia also have a new coach, Alain Giresse. His leadership has seen them go undefeated so far, something that's given fans hope.
Certainly we will make the fans dream because we are setting up with this ambition, the ambition to achieve something, and behind that ambition is good preparation, that we respect the setups, the organizations, that we are concerned about the group, and if we have this ambition, then why not?
And for the Africa Cup, the Eagles can count on the support of their fans. In the last friendly match against Burundi, the stadium was full. Many came with their families. Others were already wearing the team's new jersey.
I saw it on Facebook and I liked it so much when I was in France that I bought it straight away.
Tunisia will kick off their campaign against Angola. Their goal is to at least reach the semi-finals.
That does it for this special edition of Eye on Africa. Thanks to Steve Vickers in Alexandria. Thanks to Selena Sykes, who is here in Paris. Egypt versus Zimbabwe begins in just a few minutes. Live from Paris is next here on France 24. And we'll be back in just about 45 minutes, just in time for halftime. See you then.